So I want to talk to you guys about how people can be deceptive, dishonest, and really slimy and slippery in arguments, discourse, discussions, debates, etc. So I remember when I was a junior in high school, and I was learning about uh, how the human body worked, and I was learning about human biology in the sense of what constituted life, right? What constitutes life? How do you know if something is alive? And one of the things that we were taught in biology class was that everything that is alive consists of cells, or maybe just one cell. And if something does not have cells, then it's not really alive. And so I took this scientific fact and I applied it to the debate regarding abortion. Because the whole thing, the whole point of contention in the pro-life versus pro-choice debate is, are you destroying human life? If it's a human life, then you're killing a human life. You are murdering a human life, and therefore it is immoral. So when I was a junior in high school, I was asked to write an essay on any scientific topic. It didn't matter what the topic was, as long as it pertained to science. As long as it had something to do with what we were learning in class, it was okay. So I decided to write an essay on abortion. And I was going to take what they taught me in regards to what constitutes human life and apply it to unborn humans in regards to the entire debate revolving around abortion, the controversy of abortion. So what we learned was that all life consists of cells, all life adapts to its environment, all life responds to changes in temperature, all life requires energy to survive. So I looked at a human fetus or an embryo, and I said, okay, the embryo consists of cells. The embryo needs energy to survive. It needs food. The embryo responds to changes in temperature. It's alive. The embryo is a human life. And so when you have an abortion, you are terminating a human life. You're not terminating a pregnancy. I mean, you're ending the pregnancy. You are preventing birth, but you are really terminating a human life. So I wrote my essay, and I was actually quite happy that I wrote it, because I learned an argument against abortion that I still use today. This is an argument that I still remember. And if I ever get into a debate with someone in regards to abortion, I will utilize this argument because it is very effective. Because you're using science, right? Because everyone's talking about science, the importance of science. Is it fact? And people, especially in the left or people who believe in Darwinism, they love to talk about how Christians are anti-science. You are against science, right? You are anti-science. But they'll ignore all of these facts, scientific facts, in regards to life when it comes to their own agenda, when it comes to their own ideological bias. Facts, science, it all goes out the window, right? This person was born a man. How can he be a woman? Well, we have to refer to him as a she, but that's against biology. I thought you guys were about science. Well, throw science out the window. So I remember one morning, this was after I'm pretty certain that this was after I finished the essay. and I was in the computer room with these facts fresh in my mind, and I got into a debate with the computer teacher. I don't know how it happened, but it did. I'm not entirely certain how it happened, but it did. I think maybe I was discussing this topic with someone and he heard me and then he intervened and got involved. I don't remember. It's been years, right? This is high school. This is back in the day, right? Very long time ago. So we got into this debate on abortion, and he, of course, was pro-choice. I mean, he is a teacher, right? The likes of him, the likelihood of him being pro-life is pretty damn small. And I told him, well, we have to look at what constitutes a human life, right? What constitutes life? We're dealing with the human body here. So when we're talking about life in this context, we're referring to human life. And I said that all life has cells, all life adapts to its environment, all life requires energy to survive, all life responds to changes in temperature. You can apply all of these things to an unborn child. And instead of engaging with what I said, because I was using scientific fact, he said, "Oh, all life consists of cells?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "So if I scratch my skin, am I murdering myself?" And I'm thinking, well, obviously not, you little slimy weasel. I didn't tell him that, but he basically changed the subject. We're not talking about scratching the skin of an adult male body. We're talking about an embryo that consists of cells. We're not saying, well, if you kill a cell, are you murdering a human? We're talking about destroying the entire body here. And he knew that. But instead of dealing with the facts that I was presenting to him, he says, well, if I scratch my skin, am I murdering myself? It's like, well, obviously not, you moron. Well, you're not really a moron. You are just being deceptive. And that's another thing that I want to say in this video. There aren't really morons. There aren't really idiots in any sort of discussion or any sort of political agenda or activity. There are people who are misinformed. There are people who are uninformed. But there really are no idiots, because everyone has an agenda and everyone has a paradigm. Everyone has a vision for how society should be. And anytime someone opposes that vision or disagrees with that person, the person who holds the vision is going to argue back. That person is going to debate that person is going to debate back. And when they debate back, they are going to do little elusive maneuvers, right? They're going to try to be sneaky. They're going to try to be clever. And it's almost as if it's not even taught. Like, it's almost as if this is not taught behavior, but that it's just natural behavior or natural reactions. So let's say that I'm pro-choice. I'm not pro-choice, okay? But let's say I'm pro-choice and I say a woman has a right to choose because it's her body. And someone comes up to me and says, well, I disagree with you because it's not her body. Now, let's say I'm completely misinformed about the biological realities of pregnancy, but I strongly hold to the view of being pro-choice and being pro-abortion. I'm not going to say, well, I'm just misinformed. I'll look into it and I'll get back to you. I'm not going to say that because ego is heavily involved in here. I'm going to say, well, it is her body. Absolutely, it's her body, and no one has a right to determine what she does with her body. And if you think that you have the right, then you are a misogynist, sexist, whatever, right? Is there any sort of logic in this argument? No. So let's say that the person who disagrees with abortion, who is arguing with this feminist pro-abortion activist, let's say that this person says, Well, if it's her body, are you then arguing that she has 4 feet and that she has 4 hands and 4 heads and 4 eyes? Because when an embryo is developing in the woman's body, that child, that unborn child, will have a heart, feet, hands, a head, a little brain. It's all there. It's a developing human body. I mean, it is a human body in development, just like a 1-year-old infant is also in development. And I remember, I think this was 2 years ago, I got into a debate with this girl, and she was very pro-choice, and she said that, and she was like pro-choice to an extreme level. Because you have some people who will say, well, yeah, I'm pro-choice. I think a woman has a right to choose. Or they'll say, I'm pro-choice because if a woman is raped and she's pregnant, then she should have a right to terminate the pregnancy. Or if the pregnancy is a danger to her life, and there should be, she should have a right to have an abortion to save her own life. Blah blah blah. But they'll just leave it at that, right? They won't go into Darwinistic degrees in their agreement for abortion. But this girl was extremely pro-abortion. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. She said, she told me that she worked as a social worker dealing with poor families. And she told me, well, a lot of these families, they don't even buy enough clothes for their kids. They may not even give their children lunches when they go to school. A lot of these kids are just in terrible, dysfunctional families. They're in terrible conditions and blah, 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 blah. And then she says, that's why I'm pro-abortion. So it was like something straight out of the 19th century, something straight out of that 19th century eugenics movement that was very popular in the United States and very popular in Great Britain during that era, in which people would say things like, well, you have all these poor people, and they have all these kids, and they're ruining society, therefore we should have abortion or some kind of policy of eugenics to prevent these people from being born. And I said, wait a second. Because she was touting herself as a Democrat, as a liberal, as a progressive, as someone who was very tolerant. And I said, wait, hold on a second. That's eugenics. What you literally just said is eugenics. I told her this. What you literally just said is eugenics. You're saying that those people have no right to be born because their families are too poor or they have bad parents. Those people have no right to even be born. That's what you're telling me. And instead of just admitting to that, instead of her just saying, yeah, I'm an old school Democrat, I believe in eugenics. I mean, instead of just telling me, giving me some sort of admission, she then tries to bring the topic to being pro-choice. Well, they have a right, people have a right to choose and blah, 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 and it's her body. And she was getting very aggravated. She was getting very tense in her speech. And I asked her a very simple question. I said, well, if it's her body, then would you say that a pregnant woman has 4 hands, 4 legs, 2 brains, 2 hearts? Because it's her body. She thought about it for a few seconds with a very tense countenance on her face. And she said it. Her answer came out as something like this. Yes. Yes. She has 4 arms, 4 hands, 2 brains, 2 hearts, 2 heads. Yes, dang it. Okay. I said, so basically you're just telling me that because you want to win an argument. Now, was this girl informed about the biological realities of pregnancy? Was she informed about the scientific points in regards to what constitutes a human life? No. But she knew that she was caught. She knew that she was cornered by an effective argument, and she tried to slide right through it by just agreeing with it, right? Just to get it out of the way. It's kind of like that. I've heard this point before that people do when they're confronted with something. They I think it's something like they acknowledge and amplify. It's almost like a form of manipulation. So when you confront someone on something, you say, "Hey," you go, "Yes, and I'm proud." It's not a logical response. It's not the most logical response. Sometimes it's called for. Sometimes it is. When someone's just really being a schmuck or a jerk, and they're like, "Do you believe in this?" "Yes, I do." That sometimes that's necessary, right? But when someone is giving you a logical argument as to why you're wrong, or or you're just not informed about the reality of whatever it is that you believe in, and you respond that way, that's just, you're not really informed. But nonetheless, even though this person was not informed, was misinformed, didn't have all the facts, she still tried to slide her way away, or divert herself away from the argument by changing the subject, or by diverting it, or by speaking about women's rights, or about talking about how poor these kids are, or just straight up agreeing with something that was obviously just completely ridiculous. So this is why I say there are no idiots, right? There are no idiots. There are people who are uninformed, misinformed. There are people who are ignorant about certain things. But there are no idiots in the sense that people are just they have no ability to absorb knowledge, or they have no ability to think. There's a lot of ego that people have, and when they're confronted with opposition, they will change the subject, they will divert the attention to something else, they will try to cloud your mind, they will use manipulative tactics, all sorts of things. Even if they're on the wrong, and even if they're losing the discussion or the debate, even if they're misinformed, they will try to utilize manipulative tactics to appear as though they have won the argument, or to try to completely derail the discussion, right? And I've seen this so many times. You have people who don't answer questions, or they try to rephrase questions, or they will change the subject. People do this all the time. And one thing that I've learned over the years is that if you're arguing with somebody, if you're debating with somebody, and they change the subject, that is actually a perfect opportunity for you. So, and I really, really picked up on this when I was debating Heather Green. Heather Green, and I know you're listening, Heather, with all due respect, Heather Green loved to change the subject. And my debate with her, you can find that on my YouTube channel. She loved to change the subject, and she did it throughout the discussion. And it was about the debate itself is about 50-something minutes long. And she loved to change the subject to this, change the subject to that. And I noticed how she was changing the subject every time. And every time she changed the subject, I had to say, no, let's go back to what I'm talking about. No. And I called it the Heather dance. We're not going to do the Heather dance. Let's not change the subject. Let's deal with this first, and then we can talk about that. But let's first deal with what I'm presenting to you. But she would change the subject. In one particular part of our discussion, I asked her, okay, what else do you disagree with me on? Because Heather always had a bunch of disagreements with me. So I gave her a chance to present her disagreements so that we could discuss them. So I asked her in the middle of the discussion, what else do you disagree with me on? And she said, well, I don't like what you said in regards to Milo Yiannopoulos. For those of you who don't know, Milo Yiannopoulos, he was a big internet personality, very famous at one point in time, although his fame has greatly been reduced. But he was very famous at one point in time. He was an idol for the entire really for the entire Western right wing. And Milo Yiannopoulos is homosexual, and he stated remarks that were positive towards pederasty, man-boy love. I don't like using the word love, but that's a term that's used. It's really disgusting. And I never liked Milo. I wrote against him several times. And then in 2017, there was this video, a couple of videos that were being spread around, being disseminated on the internet, showing Milo saying things that were in support of pederasty. And Heather Green brought up Milo with me, and she said, well, Milo he's now held back onto his Catholic faith, and he's leaving that lifestyle, and yada, yada, yada. And I said, what I don't understand about you, Heather, is that you're very critical of me, but you're not critical of Milo. And I asked her, well, I told her about Milo's statements on pederasty. That's why I don't like him, and I don't trust him. And I told her, even if he has stated that he's going back to his Catholic faith or whatever he said, I still don't trust him because of his past statements. I can't trust somebody who went that far in depravity, because that's a step that people don't really walk back from. It's like stepping into hell, embracing hell, and then claiming, well, I'm left. It's just, you don't just step into hell. Like, that's a firm decision, to quote Dave Chappelle. And I just don't trust him. So Heather says to me, oh, well, Milo would say things to shock people. And again, this is a manipulative tactic. It's the same thing as when people act like complete assholes, and then when confronted, they say, oh, it was just a joke. Well, sometimes things are just jokes, but sometimes they're not. And people will be very dishonest and say, well, it's just a joke. It's just a joke. Well, no. They'll just try to hide behind the masquerade of humor all the time. But Heather tried to pull that on me. She said, oh, well, he used to say things that were shocking. Well, there's being shocking for the sake of PR, but that itself has its limit. Like, how far are you going to go? You can say some shocking things here and there that could be humorous, and we could let that slide because we'll say, okay, he's just trying to be provocative. But there's a limit. In my mind, in my perspective, there's a limit to that. Just like there's a limit to jokes. And there are certain lines that you should never cross. Pederasty, pedophilia, these are things you don't cross. Okay, you don't cross. And I said to her, even if he said those things to shock people, which I don't think he did, because just in the way he said it, the format that he said these things, or the two different formats that he said these things in, it was obvious that he was saying these things in a very serious way, and in a tone of voice that sounded as if he was very convinced by what he was saying. And I said, well, how could you even accept that argument? Like, in what context are such statements ever appropriate? In what context? But her argument was, well, it was just for shock value. Well, this is not shock value. This is something that's very serious. You're talking about the abuse of children. You're talking about the abuse of very young teenage boys. This is not something to be humorous about. There's nothing funny about this. But her argument was, well, it was for shock value. Well, that's diverting. You're deflecting the whole thing. We're talking about this very serious issue, and then you say, oh, no, it's just for shock value. It's manipulative, is my point. And people will do this. Another example is, I remember a lot of people can't answer questions. A lot of people can't really answer straight questions. Not because they're uninformed or misinformed or ignorant. It's because they don't want to. This is why I say there are no idiots. Because people know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, and when they hear an argument that's convincing, or when they hear an argument that may fly into the face of whatever they're saying, they try to deflect, change the subject, rephrase the question, etc., etc. They know what they're doing, and they know that they are diverting from the subject at hand. So I remember last year, I'm pretty certain it was last year. Yeah, it was last year. I got in the summer of last year, I got into a debate with a convert to Eastern Orthodoxy. And this guy told me that I can't know truly what is good and evil unless I understand the energy essence distinction. And this is energy essence distinction is a term that is used by Eastern Orthodox theologians. It's not something that some Orthodox peasant in the Ukraine or in Belarus knows. It's not something that some average Orthodox person in Serbia knows. This is something that is pretty much discussed within the seminary. It's not something that's discussed in the average church or to a congregation in Siberia somewhere. In fact, I looked up the term energy essence distinction in Russian, and I found like 2 videos. I looked it up in Serbian, and I found 1 video, and it was some Serbian theologian talking about it, and the video had like, I don't know, 20 views or something. I looked it up in English, and I found only like 3 people online talking about this. It was like Jay Dyer and a couple of other people. I don't remember. But this is mainly something that's discussed by Orthodox influencers online from mainly the United States. So I just don't understand how someone has to understand or someone has to know about the energy essence distinction to recognize what is evil. And this was my point of contention with this guy. And I asked him a very simple question. I said, "Are you pro-life?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I'm pro-life. And I don't understand the energy essence distinction. So how did you come to the conclusion that abortion is evil?" And I came to the same conclusion, yet I don't understand the energy essence distinction. It took me about, I don't know, 3 minutes to get a straight answer from this guy. He knew exactly what I was trying to say. He knew exactly what I meant by my question. But he was running away from it. So this is how a lot of people are. In fact, I would say that this is how most people are. When I interviewed Martin Sellner is one of the leaders of the Austrian identitarian movement. Basically, it's Nazism repackaged. That's what it is. It's Nazism with square glasses and polo shirts, right? It's like frat boys who became Nazis. And they try to be clever about who they are, and they say, we're not Nazis, we're identitarians. But then if you actually look at their writings, it's full of talks about, or it's full of essays about genetic differences, and it's full of essays about nationalism and blood and soil, and you see them quoting old Nazi ideologues, but they're not Nazis, right? They're identitarians, and that's just another form of manipulation. When someone can see something so obvious right in front of their own eyes, and they say, "Hey, these guys are Nazis." No, we're not. Just deny it right in front of them. Just completely deny it, as if the person is going to believe you. And when you look at a situation like that, you have to really recognize that the only person who's living in delusion is the person who's making the lie, because he actually believes that people are going to believe him. So I asked Martin Sellner a very simple question, because Martin Sellner claims to be a traditional Catholic. And I asked him a very simple question. I said, what is more important to you? The people or the church? The nation or the church? Because you are Catholic, yes? And I read to him a quote from a Catholic scholar. Oh, I forget his name. I don't remember his name, but there was a Catholic scholar who wrote against Nazism. He wrote a book called My Fight Against Hitler. My internet is messed up. Okay. Anyway, I read this book, and it was written by this Catholic scholar. And in this book, it talks about the dangers of nationalism. And it says that, yes, Dietrich von Hildebrand was the Catholic scholar that I quoted to this guy. So I quoted Hildebrand, in which Hildebrand stated that in nationalism, the church is inferior to the nation. The nation is superior to the church. So I said, so Sellner, which comes first, the nation or the church? And Sellner never answered the question. Didn't answer it. Changed the subject, try to say, well, what I really believe is, and just answer the question. What's so difficult about it? And that's how you know that somebody is losing. When you ask them a very simple question and they start slippering around. They start just vacillating everything or changing the subject or deflecting. That's how you know you're winning and they're losing. Because if you're truly confident about what you believe in, if you're truly certain, and if you have honor, you're going to answer that question. You're going to say, if Martin Sellner was honest, he would have simply said, oh, the nation is more important than the church. Because from what I saw about him, and from what I read about him, and from what I read about his organization, his movement, these people are obsessed with race. They will claim Catholicism, not all of them, but some of them will claim Catholicism, but they will also talk about how it is important to collaborate with pagans and to even incorporate in their movement Catholics and pagans. People who have, and Martin Sellner himself has said this. He said that in our movement we have people who wear crosses and we have people who wear Thor's hammer. And so obviously Catholicism is of no importance to him. Christianity is of no importance to him, because if it was, he wouldn't not believe that. He just wouldn't believe, he wouldn't want to work with pagans. Because if you're working with pagan nationalists and they have Thor's hammer and they got Odin on their t-shirts, or they call themselves something like, I don't know, the Sons of Odin, Warriors of Odin, something crazy like that, you're dealing with people who hate Christianity. Because the people who are pagan nationalists, their vision of their society is a society where race is prioritized, race becomes the central issue, and a part of that prioritization of race, that fixation on race, a part of that is also fixation on the native religion. So one of the big contentions of pagans, of racists actually, is that Christianity should be thrown out or abolished because Christianity is not even a European religion. It's not. Christianity is a Semitic religion. It comes from, originally, I mean, if you want to get down to it, it comes from the deserts of Mesopotamia when God went to Abraham. It's a Semitic religion. It comes from the Middle East. It's not native to Europe. And so one of the big arguments of the nativist or the pagan nationalist is that Christianity should not be a part of their country. Paganism should, because paganism is actually the native religion of the indigenous population thousands of years ago, or hundreds and hundreds of years ago, before Christianity took over those European lands. And this is what a lot of those people believe. So if you're going to say, well, Christians need to stand side by side with pagan nationalists, then what you're actually doing is collaborating with people whose whole reason of being pagan in the first place is to honor their ancestors, because that is the native religion of the land. And that actually corresponds with the whole blood and soil ideology. So it's really impossible to have Christianity be harmonious with such a movement or such an ideology. It's impossible. So when I asked Martin Sellner, what comes first, the nation or the church? He said, he didn't answer the question. He couldn't even say it's the church. He couldn't say it's the nation. He didn't want to answer the question. Why? Because deep down inside, he knows that his movement is obsessed with race and that the Christian church could never come before their agenda. Just the bottom line. If he was honest, he would have just said the nation comes first. But he didn't want to be honest because that would expose him as a Nazi. So he couldn't do it. He's not stupid. He's not idiotic. He's not misinformed. He's actually quite an educated person. I don't think he's that misinformed. I would say that he is a deceiver. Now, deceivers are themselves deceived. It's like St. Paul talks about, I think in Timothy or Galatians, St. Paul talks about people who are deceived and yet are deceivers themselves. deceiving and yet being deceived themselves. And that's what these people are. They're deceived, and they're deceivers in the sense that they are manipulative, and they're using manipulation to spread their agenda. And they're deceived themselves in the sense that they either believe in what they're doing, which is evil, or they actually believe that people can't catch them, or that people can't notice that they're full of crap. So this is something that I've noticed most of my life. I mean, I haven't been debating my entire life, because I wasn't debating when I was an infant. Let's just put it that way. But I was debating. I began debating with people when I was in junior high, and it continued on from there. So I've debated a lot of people throughout my life, and this is just a pattern of behavior that I've noticed over the years. And I got into a debate with someone else a few days ago with some guy who calls himself Matthew, and he was the same way. Same way. I asked him a very simple question. Well, I asked him to really engage with something that was quite obvious. We were debating on the death penalty. And, of course, I believe in capital punishment. He doesn't believe in capital punishment. He doesn't believe that the state actually should kill anyone, should execute anybody. And he brought up the thief on the cross, like, oh, this person who was sentenced to death, he asked Jesus to remember him. He was repentant and all this stuff. And I said, yeah, but the thief on the cross also said that we deserve what we're getting. We, meaning the thief who repented and the other thief who wasn't repentant. And I said, the thief on the cross stated, we deserve death. And I said, was the thief wrong? Couldn't answer a question. He could not answer a question. In fact, at one point he said, well, I never said the thief was wrong. I said, well, you think that the thief is wrong. I never said the thief was wrong. Oh, so you think the thief is right. He knew he was caught, but he could never really be firm with his answer. So this is the type of thing that I've just noticed for so many years of my life, and I've seen so much of this stuff. It's like when I asked him, well, is there such a thing as the state ever killing somebody justifiably? And he said, well, governments do kill. It happens. I'm not asking you if it happens. I'm asking you, can a state justifiably execute somebody? Took me a while to finally get an answer out of him. So, and then I also asked him, if somebody raped and murdered your wife and the police arrested him and the court sentenced him to death, sentenced the murderer to death, would you defend that person? Well, I wouldn't defend his actions. I'm not asking you about whether or not you would defend his actions. I'm asking you, would you defend the killer as if you were a lawyer? It took me a while to get a straight answer out of him. Eventually, he said that he would defend that person in the sense that he would say that person does not deserve to be killed, shouldn't be killed. But it took me a while to get that answer out of him because he knew exactly what I was asking him, but he didn't want to answer it because he knew that it would make him look like a moron, really. So, yeah, I've just seen this sort of behavior for decades, and I just thought I would share this with you guys just to let you guys know about the reality of this, because a lot of people still haven't really picked up on this. I think most people don't really debate. Most people don't really argue. I think because they're intimidated by it. Debating can be intimidating, and arguing with other people can be intimidating because you're putting your beliefs on the line. You're putting your beliefs out and allowing others to pick them apart. And that can be scary. And it is. It's intimidating. But at the same time, the last thing that I personally want to be is an echo chamber. I know I do videos, recorded videos where it's me talking, and I love doing these videos because this is what most of the activity on this channel is. It's me giving you guys my thoughts. I don't mind doing the videos on politics and or certain current events like Kazakhstan. because that's very important to know. But at the same time, the videos that I enjoy doing the most are these flow of consciousness videos. Like yesterday, I did a video on music. Right now, I'm doing a video on my observations on how people can be manipulative in debates. These are flow of consciousness videos. I really don't prepare for these videos. I have an idea of what I want to talk about. I do remember some stories in my head, but I just go with the flow. I go with the flow with these conversations. And I really enjoy doing them because it's relaxing. It really is relaxing. But I also want to tell you guys these things because a lot of you guys really aren't aware of it. A lot of people in general aren't really aware of this. A lot of people don't like arguing, but if they ever do find themselves in a debate, you will most definitely have to face these sorts of people and these sorts of tactics. So hopefully this will be helpful for you guys. And you guys just heard some theology. God bless.